Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday Zoom service. My name is Sharon Parrish, and I will be your Zoom platform assistant for today. Jan Snoop will be your Zoom host.
I'm going to play something by maybe America's biggest fan of Christmas, Irving Berlin. Thank you.
I introduce myself. I'm Sharon Parrish, and I will be your platform assistant. And our speaker for the day will be Rev Karen Gray, and her topic is What Next? The Gospel of You. And of course, you heard our musician, Wilentz. Next, I will be doing the opening prayer, the centering prayer. You can meditate, close your eyes, keep your eyes open. Father, I want to trust you more. Help me in the places where I struggle to believe. I long for greater faith and deeper understanding of you. I praise you in advance. In Jesus' name, amen. Now we will have our special music by Wilentz.
Thank you, Sharon. I have some interesting selections today. As I told you already, I did the Irving Berlin song that was "Let's Face the Music and Dance." The theme is somewhat about, of course, about understanding what a song is about, understanding what a message is about, and how sometimes your approach to something and your first impression of something may not be what your last impression is, and what your subsequent impressions are. With Let's Face the Music and Dance, for instance, for me, the message when I was younger was always, carpe diem. That was the basic message of it, was but now the message is time is running short, because I'm older and time is running short, and I want to make sure that I get everything I can out of life while I still can, while I'm still mobile, while I'm still able to enjoy the things that life has that the Lord has allowed me to enjoy, and that I'm understanding how lucky I am to enjoy those things, and understanding that they're there for me to try and take advantage of while I still can. So that's what that song is about. Now, this next song I'm going to sing is by, of all people, Jimi Hendrix. And it was one of the opening songs on his second album, which I think is still one of the great masterpieces of music. And this song is, I thought, was about alien visitation, which was kind of a popular thing back in the 60s, as you might remember, about, people looking at Machu Picchu and Chichen Itza and all that stuff and thinking, oh, the aliens helped them build. Of course, they had nothing to do with it. It's, these are people and their ingenuity. But this song, I just initially thought that's all it was about. But as I got older, I realized the song is actually about pollution and about what we've done and what we need to do. And somebody who has the perspective of an alien who looks and sees, what have we done to the planet? So it's a beautiful song as far as that's concerned. I recorded this with Karen and my close friend, Pam Bricker, who we lost, unfortunately, a number of years back. And her version is similar to how I'm going to do. Of course, I could never sing anything like she did, but I'm going to do my best to interpret the song the way she did, which was kind of like as if Mose Allison had recorded the tune. And it's a beautiful tune and a lot of fun, and it's also kind of got a heavy message. So I felt differently about it lately. It's called Up From the Skies. I just want to talk to you. I won't do you no harm. I just want to know about your different lives on this people farm. I heard some of you got families living in cages tall and cold. Some just stay there and dust away past the age of old. Is this true? Please let me talk to you. I heard some of you thought to know about the rooms upon your minds. Do I see a vacuum there? And am I going blind? Or is it just remains from vibrations and echoes long ago? Things like love the world and let your fancy flow. Is this true? Please let me talk to you. Let me talk to you. I have lived here before, the days of ice. And of course this is why I'm so concerned. I come back to find the stars are misplaced, and the smell of a world that has burned. The smell of a world that has burned. So where do I purchase my ticket? I would like to have a ringside seat. I want to know about this new Mother Earth. I want to hear and see everything. I want to hear and see everything, everything, everything. Is it all true? I just want to talk to you. Is this true? Please let me talk to you. Please let me talk to you. I just want to talk to you. Just let me talk to you. Thank you. That's for you, Pammy.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Wayne. Yeah, a little nod to our dear friend Pam. That's a nice feature of the day. All right, friends, here we are. Well, Kaywood, once again, called me and asked me if I would speak, and we agreed that being the day after Christmas, we would have a gentle service on this day after Christmas. And later I thought, it's not like our services are normally rough, so I'm not sure what he meant. But I know what I meant. I thought, just a gentle invitation, some things to think about. So here we are on December 26th, having spent several weeks, maybe even more, anticipating the celebration of the birth of the Christ child, including with the beautiful Advent wreath that Cheryl and Chick set up at their home. To say the least, this is a cherished story, beloved by all, it seems. And I promise I have no interest in taking a unity wrecking ball to it with a lot of metaphysical interpretation. But I do want to say that there is, of course, more to the story. It really is the story of all of us. So let's just reflect on that a bit in the moments to come. I know that I would love to hear more of your story. I'm interested in Wayne's story. And so I told him a bit about my talk today, even though the theme of it kind of kept evolving. But I asked him to select and perform some songs that tell parts of his story. And, you know, I've known him for a long time. We know each other pretty well. And yet, if I ask something like, would you please choose a song that says something as part of your story, I'm going to learn something new. There's always so much more to learn. And for a while, when I was having trouble figuring out what I was going to talk about, really, I said to him that he might need to choose 7 or 8 songs in place of my talk. But I did come up with a little something to say. I had a wonderful Christmas day yesterday. I hope you did too. And then after the birth of the baby, what do we celebrate besides Boxing Day? Well, after the birth, we celebrate, of course, what comes next. And in the Christ story, we don't really know. Nothing much is said about the first 30 years of Jesus' life. And I think that means that we get to make it up. And I think that's great. Now, I am not going to ask you to go and write a gospel of your own. This is a gentle service, no homework, no assignments. But this is an invitation to think about it. If you did write your own story of Jesus, what would you say? And since we are unity, I will more carefully say this. If you did write your own story of the Christ, what would you say? And we remember that the Gospels aren't at their best. They aren't at their most powerful, meaningful, when we treat them as stories of a man, even a divine man. The Christ story, in its fullness, is the story of consciousness itself. The birth is the birth of God consciousness, and how that consciousness expresses as we follow Jesus' ministry. The Bible is our textbook for learning about ourselves. It traces the evolution of humankind from Adam consciousness through to Christ consciousness. And Christ consciousness is our awareness of our divine nature. So when we celebrate Christmas, we do so with the metaphor of a child's birth, what Emmett Fox calls the spiritual idea. What we really want to celebrate and consider and meditate on is the birth of divine consciousness. Once we are born into that consciousness, our own life is what we read about in Jesus' story. A lot of people wrote these Gospels, most famously Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then, thanks to some farmers in Egypt in the middle of the last century, we also have Gospels from Thomas and Philip and Peter and even Judas. We also have a Gospel of Mary. I have it. Ta-da. And I have on numerous occasions picked up this book excitedly thinking that it was about Mary, the mother of Jesus. And I really want to read that gospel, but I'm not sure if it exists. This one actually is the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Also very important, also very interesting. But I just find myself always wanting to know more about the perspective of Mary, the mom. So I just want to share with you in this book some of the table of contents items. An eternal perspective. Mary and Jesus. Overcoming the power. The power's plural. And then becoming authentic. I love these titles. I mean, I don't think she organized it and came up with those titles, but that's how it's written up now. Now, a couple of lines from Becoming Authentic. Here's one. The authentic person exists within you. Follow that person. Those who seek will find. From the Gospel of Mary. Also, we should praise his greatness because he has prepared us and made us authentic people. I actually find it kind of challenging to read this in long stretches. You know, it really is fragments just compiled together after it was found. But I definitely find it rewarding to pick it up for a few lines here and there, just to think about. What we have in all of these Gospels is, of course, a selection of stories and teachings. And as students of truth, we seek a deeper meaning, a more personal meaning. We find that meaning by opening ourselves up, reading, hearing some of these words, and then by quietly listening in, tuning into our own inner wisdom, and kind of filling in the blanks. But it's not random, it's not arbitrary, it's from our internally sourced wisdom, the most valid source. And I really just wonder, because I know everybody here on this call, right? I just wonder what your personal gospel would say. And if it seems too bold a task to create and tell your version of the Christ story, I want to offer some encouragement, because unity does ask us to think in some really bold ways. But recall that the Gospels that are best known to us frequently contradict each other. For example, who carried the cross to Jesus' crucifixion? Depends who you ask. In the Gospel of John, we're told that Jesus carried it, but Mark says that it was Simon of Cyrene. I don't know how to pronounce it. And then, in Mark, we're told that after the crucifixion, Mary Magdalene and Mary, mother of Jesus, and Salome went to the tomb together in the morning after Jesus died. But in John, we read that Mary Magdalene went alone, and it was at nighttime. In other words, when you're coming up with your story, don't let a fear of fact-checking slow you down. We are not really in it for the hard facts anyway. We are in it for the meaning. And this is how storytelling goes, right? We go off in tangents. But what's the meaning? So the most important thing you can do is place yourself in the Jesus stories. Make it the gospel according to your life and your perspective. Lately, I've been reading and listening to the teachings of Neville Goddard. New to me, but I really like it. Neville Goddard, a teacher, an author, he lived until 1972. And if you look him up, you find a lot of teachings about manifesting. And it's interesting, so I like it. But what I was really reading lately and what I want to share now is his other big area of focus, which is on the God self of humanity, the divine identity in each of us. Neville Goddard wasn't part of Unity, but definitely taught some similar principles. His teachings are that we create our own reality through our imagination. And he says explicitly, our imagination is God. That's the creative power. That's what God is. And our imagination has creative power, is creative power. So we have to constantly be vigilant with our thoughts. Sounds unity. And this takes me to something by Emmett Fox. Fox said that there are two synonyms for God, for the word God. They are mind and cause. So 3 words, God, mind, and cause. God is the religious word, mind, the metaphysical word, and cause is the natural science word. But they all mean the same thing, creator of all things. And that is who we are and what we are, creator of all things. Life is a state of consciousness. We are transformed by the renewing of our minds. Our level of consciousness can be constantly adjusted. It's always changing, either deliberately or sometimes by neglect. It fluctuates. So we hear the name Jesus and we think of the man in his ministry. Or maybe we think of the child in the manger. Or maybe the resurrected Savior and way shower. We hear the word God and we think of the presence, the one presence. And maybe we still have the habit of thinking God and thinking up high, above, external. Or maybe we've learned to think immediately of God as truly within. Our truth studies will really have taken hold when we hear the word God and think of ourselves, our own very personal identity. Claim it, own it. We live up to that identity when we shed our mortal habits. And we do that when we accept our divine identity, our divine nature. That is a big order. And yet that's what we're here to do. To recognize our power and responsibility for creating our life experiences. And our truth teachings have really taken hold when we think of Christmas, not as the celebration of the birth of a precious child, even the Son of God, but as a celebration of the awakening of God consciousness. And that God consciousness is awakened where? In the manger? Sure. As long as the manger represents our innermost heart and soul. When I called this talk, What's Next? I meant, after weeks of anticipating Christmas, what next? What do we do once we know that mother and baby are doing fine? We only get one little story of Jesus as a child, when he's 12 or so and he holds court at the temple and he's wowing the scholars with his wisdom and clarity. But you know, he didn't get there in just that one giant step. I bet he said some amazing things when he was little. And maybe someday we will get some record of that. I don't know. But like those tracts that were found in Egypt, maybe one day we'll get some more records writing down some of his brilliant gems from earlier in his life. I don't know. Who knows? But until then, what could we imagine? What could we imagine about those early years? What would our own wisdom and experience and awareness tell us? Children often have such spiritual depth and clarity. One of my favorites from Reverend Dorothy, when she was 5 years old, she just suddenly piped up, unprompted, from the back seat of the car and said, "Mama, the other day I felt a drop of love land on my head. It wasn't cold. It felt like blue light. And I think God put it there. And I think it's going to be there forever." Just imagine what truth bombs Jesus dropped on his mom. I wish we knew. And then after that story of the 12-year-old Jesus teaching at the temple, we hear nothing else for the next 18 years or so, not until he turns water into wine and kicks off his ministry. Or maybe his baptism is what kicked off his ministry. Either way, water had something to do with it. So we wonder, what were those years like? Little is known, pretty much nothing is known, and yet there is some writing, there is some speculation about his travels and his profession. But what we definitely know is that there is more to the story than we've been told. And yet, while I wish I could know more of the story about this life, the life of the man Jesus, I then remember that what really matters is not at its essence about him and his life. It is about us. Stories still to be told. It's about you. It's about me. It's our lives. And I really want to know more about our lives. I want to drop the details of circumstances in our lives into all the parables and miracles of the Gospels and see how they work out, kind of like Mad Libs. So maybe you didn't, restore sight to a blind man. But maybe you have helped somebody. Maybe you've helped somebody with a learning disability or some kind of a challenge to get through her studies. I think about the students who've been supported by Chick and Kathleen, and surely that's a lot of ministry stories. And instead of feeding thousands with a few loaves of bread, in what other way have you found and stretched resources to help somebody who needed it? I know you've done it. And I bet there's a time when you resurrected yourself right out of a disastrous situation where you seemed to have little hope, but you kept at it until you found yourself on the other side of that difficulty. That's what I want to know. Emmett Fox says that life is a state of consciousness. And so in telling the life story, we are unveiling the different stages of consciousness. And while there are many, many variables, the key characteristic of any state of life consciousness is the degree of alignment with the God identity. If we agree that we want to achieve a fuller identification with our God self, do we? Well, why wouldn't we? More power, more fulfillment. Yes, but also more responsibility along the lines of the buck stops here. When we are creating our own reality, there's that responsibility. It's like this. Dorothy and I are getting ready to move back to D.C. after living in Maryland for several years. And I like to joke that it's because having voting representation in Congress has become too much of a burden. And I want the relief that only can come from returning to the place where citizens are stripped of those rights and they have no power and no responsibility. And yet, there is loss that comes with that lack of responsibility. There's suffering even. And there's just the pure fact that something is wrong when empowerment is stifled. That is the problem with the lack of voting representation. And how much worse to stifle the empowerment that comes from knowing the God self. For that problem, there is no legislation, no lobbying, no activism. What does it take to fully embody and embrace the true nature as God individualized? What does it take? Willingness. And it takes some practice, and it takes focus, and it takes prayer and meditation. At least that's what I try. And when I practice, and when I focus, and when I pray, and when I meditate, I can catch a glimpse of this lofty ideal, this reality. And in that glimpse, it does add up. I believe it, I know it, I understand it, I accept it, I receive it. But I sometimes have to concentrate really hard to remember myself as God expressed. You know, I really don't want to project my problems onto you. Maybe a lot of you don't have that trouble, but I think some of us do. We get into our mortal habits of seeing ourselves as residents purely of this material world. When I'm in the kitchen after a long day of work and I'm hurriedly preparing dinner, I am not so much in my God self. When I am sitting at my desk trying to respond to a growing list of client demands, I am not so much in my God self. Even when I'm taking a walk in the woods or going for a swim, I can be oblivious to my God self. And I have to remind myself. It's like lift your eyes up, raise your eyes up. Another great application of that line. Everyone is different, and you might be more consistent than I am. Do you remember how Reverend Lafayette Seymour was? He truly resided there, didn't he? He was good at remembering his true spiritual identity and reminding us of ours. It comes down to this. I just don't want the Christmas season to get away from us without our calling to mind, to our consciousness, the fact that the birth we celebrate on Christmas Day is the awakening of God consciousness. And we get to do it again and again, year after year, because we need the reminder. And you've got that. So let the celebration be about you and your wonderful, amazing story. And for our meditation, speaking to you as God, your God self, I'm going to just take us through some Emmett Fox thoughts, his essay, 7 Aspects of God. So please make yourself comfortable, alert, relaxed. Have your head uplifted so you have a clear passageway for breath. Like every breath is the first breath for your life expression. The first aspect of God is life. God is life. The second aspect of God is truth. Not truthfulness, but truth itself. Truth is the great healer. It sets you free. The third aspect of God, love. And as long as we love God above all else, God prevails. We may have a challenge, we may have a problem, but we don't need to elevate that challenge or problem higher than God. As long as we hold God at the highest level, love God the most, we're okay. Number 4 is intelligence. Emmett Fox says that disharmony is impossible when all intelligence is at work toward the common good. The fifth aspect is soul. And soul represents how God is individualized as each of us. And in this way, you are the presence of God. And then spirit. Spirit is that which cannot deteriorate. It is the opposite of matter. Matter deteriorates immediately and constantly, whereas spirit is always renewing. And the final aspect is principle. Principle never changes. For example, water seeks its own level. That's a principle. It's true here, there, and everywhere. It's a principle true now and in the past and in the future forevermore. Unchanging principle. Fox says divine principle is the one power, the only power that exists. Divine principle. These 7 aspects of God, find them in yourself. Life, truth, love, intelligence, soul, spirit, and principle. Claim it, own it, know it. See these in yourself. Take that power, take that responsibility. This is who you are. If you knew Reverend Lafayette Seymour, take it from him. He would tell you the same thing, right? This is you. Be it. Be who you are. An expression of God. Own your God self. Claim your God self. Celebrate your God self. And your constantly renewing sense of, divine consciousness, this awareness that is you, that is yours. Don't leave it behind. But if you do, come back and get it. take a nice deep breath. So wonderful, so enriching, so nourishing. Then a cleansing exhale, so relaxing. And as you're ready, open your eyes. Behold the Zoom room of community in front of you. And join us back here in this space. Thanks.
Excuse me, you just said something. I mean, that was amazing, first of all. Let me just say that. That was phenomenal. And, you know, I was accused of both Jan and Karen beforehand of not paying attention to what's being said. But that's not true. I always pay attention. And one of the things you said that really grabbed me was the concept of God, mind, cause. I mean, I found that just brilliant. And I've never thought of it that way. But the song I'm about to sing has a line in it which goes, "For all we know, this may only be a dream," which of course is mind, right? Because it's, are we all thinking in terms of you know, how much, you know, everyone is the main actor in their own show, right? Isn't that it's kind of the one of the crazy conceits that we have as people. Excuse me. But but I mean, I think it also you know, explains in a way, or at least it references what Karen was talking about mind, and about the concept of the fact that, you know, we are divinity inside, in here, right? This song, you know, we were talking earlier about how our perspective in life changes towards something. We're the same people. The work of art, or whatever we're talking about, or religion, is the same religion. It's the same work of art. But our perspective on it changes as life goes on, because we've learned different things and we've approached it. Now, this song, "For All We Know," which is one of my all-time favorite songs by Sam Lewis and J. Fred Coots. And I was introduced to it by a beautiful version by Ray Charles and Betty Carter. It was the first time I really knew about this song. And they keep changing, you know, they keep exchanging lines, which is interesting when you think about it, because I mean, at first, it just feels like two people who are like on the brink of something that could be disastrous, finding something together, you know, and facing it together, knowing that this relationship may not last. As I got older, I realized this is kind of the world's greatest pickup song of all time. Because, you know, it's like, if you listen to lyrics, it's like, oh, that's pretty smooth, man, or lady, whoever sings it. Right. But now I understand that it's really all about making connections while you can make connections with other people, and knowing that these connections may be impermanent, just like everything else, you know, but then there's that spark of divinity that makes all connections permanent. So I think that's really what this song reminded me of when I was listening to Karen's sermon just now. I think it really says that. So I'm going to do it now, finally. Shut up, Wayne, and sing. For all we know, we may never meet again. Before you go, make this moment sweet again. We won't say goodnight until the last minute. I'll hold out my hand, and my heart will be in it. For all we know, well, this may only be a dream. We come we go like the ripples in a stream. So love me tonight. Tomorrow was made for some. Tomorrow may never come. For all we know, for all we know, this may only be a dream. We come and we go like the ripples in a stream. So love me tonight. Tomorrow was made for some. Tomorrow may never come. For all we know, tomorrow may never come. For all we know. Thanks so much for having me again. I always love being here.
Say the closing prayer. I just want to thank Rev Karen Gray for that wonderful, fantastic message that she gave today. And Wayne, your music is phenomenal. Thank you so much. My closing prayer has to do with faith. Father in heaven, I praise you for your faithfulness to me. You are loving and kind to me. You are always present, always available, always protecting. You never let your word come back void. If you say it, I know I can believe it. Father, I ask that you give me a peace capacity for unshakable faith. Show me each day your hand in my life, in the big and small things I go through. I praise you for renewed faith and trust in you. In Jesus' name, amen.